So next on the agenda,
You have to make a motion to come out.
oh,
Make a motion to come back into the regular meeting
oh, sorry.
at 7:09.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Next is the sewer ordinance and regulations. Alyssa, do you wanna give us a
Sure.
brief?
We have, been working on this project for quite a while. Jeff has, rewritten the document for you, and we have separated out, we've established what we feel, what should be it's always been ordinances. And going forward, what we've done is separate out ordinances and then put in regulations, so that, it's just more manageable to operate. So the ordinances are kind of giving rules of which the sewer commission operates by. And then the regulations are rules underneath of which, like, for applications, for hookups, for if we need to change something so that, something usually minor, I can't think of something off the top of my head, but it's something that it would then not require a town meeting for, because the way they're designed now is that if we want to change anything, then we have to request a town meeting for it and stuff. So, Jeff probably can expand on it a little bit more, but that's pretty much what we've done. Right now it's sort of been rough. There's a couple little things that, when you looked at it for as long as we've looked at, I think we found one or two things that just need to be amended. That's in the works right now, but we just wanted you to be on board with what we're doing and at least have, the first stab at what we've, sort of written together for both regulations.
Do we need to ratify this? Is that the ultimate goal?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're gonna have to take the ordinance to town meeting.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes
That's
sense.
so you'll have to approve the amendments to the ordinance. Before we really got into the weeds, we did come to the Board of Selectmen and ask them if they would consider this.
Mhm.
What I believe the history was that when probably in the late sixties or maybe the early seventies, when the DEP was urging all the towns to have sewer commissions or water pollution control authorities, they created a model ordinance, and back in my youth, I saw that model ordinance, and I'm sure they gave you it, and you adopted, the town adopted it, and it had definitions, it had, the basic structure of a sewer, of a sewer system. The problem is that over time, that ordinance has become partially invalid, it's become inconsistent with some state regulations. And it's very cumbersome to amend it, to deal with a sewer operation on a day-to-day basis with having to go to town meeting to change anything. So what I had long ago suggested to the sewer commission was that they split out what might be the regulations of the sewer use from the enabling legislation. And so, and on the day-to-day, like, for example, 10 years ago, there really wasn't any such thing as regulation for grease, for restaurants. Now, grease creates a huge problem for a sewer operation. Now the DEP is urging they're saying to the town, you gotta deal with this, and they actually have a general permit for grease, but the local authority has to do that. Well, is it easier to adopt a regulation, or is it easier to amend the ordinance? Well, it's much more easy to deal with it as a regulation. In the day-to-day operation, they find out that it's a hardship for connection fee to be paid all at once, so they can pass a regulation so we can pay it over 5 years. They have that ability, but working on an ordinance is very difficult. So I split it out, and I think the only real issue on the ordinance, from my standpoint, is how vacancies are filled. And I guess, Randy is looking at that. The way it now reads is vacancies are filled by the commission, by the sewer commission. And I think that is not consistent with state statute for elected, because you're elected, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah,
They're elected.
yeah. I think that usually it has to be, but I believe the statute says that, the vacancy can be filled until the next election, and then somebody has to run for that office, to fill, you know, that's another elected office, so. So that's, I think, the only issue. You know, I brought the fines up to date, you know, from maybe $100 a day to, I think, down $250, and, so I don't know how much, and we've separated out all the regulatory stuff, you know.
Yep.
So we're actually having a public hearing next week on the regulations.
Tuesday.
Just so that we have to have that.
Mhm.
So I don't know, do you have the ordinance, the draft ordinance, or are we waiting for Randy?
Yes, I think it might make sense to have us set a special meeting for a technical review and maybe have Alyssa and Jeff come back so that we can
Okay.
sort of walk through this, because it's not minor changes, it's,
Oh, no, no,
it's pretty
you know, and it's
big changes.
such
and I'd like-
scintillating reading, so I mean, I know there's a lot of material in there, so
Yeah.
to just read it quickly is, you know, you need to take a hard look at it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I had at one point sent out a red line of the changes, and there's mostly red lines, but, you know, I've, you know, there's, sometimes the WPCA or the sewer commission has trouble with recalcitrant, customers,
Mhm.
and, you know, we've put in some pretty big teeth in there for that situation. But in all my years, although we've threatened to use those teeth with other commissions, we've never used them, so people come right around very quickly, it's amazing. So,
So when is the next sewer meeting?
Next sewer meeting is February, it's the second Tuesday in.
Same day as the next selectmen's meeting.
Oh, that's right.
So it's going to be February 11th.
yeah, I don't know if you would have I should probably talk to Randy, if you would have a public hearing before the town meeting or not, I don't know the answer to that.
If there's
Okay,
a,
well, Randy will tell you.
okay.
It's either you have maybe you have a public hearing on the same day as your meeting. I don't know.
So what are schedules looking like, or do you have a question?
I don't know, no.
I think it's important for us to take a little bit of a deeper dive, so we understand.
Well, I read through it a couple times, I still didn't understand it.
Oh,
I mean, I understood it, but I just sort of like, I don't understand the ramifications, I guess, is really what I'm getting at.
the ramifications, in my opinion, is that it gives the the sewer commission
Mhm.
greater flexibility to deal with issues that are troublesome to them as they come up.
Internally,
Through regulations.
internally, because
Right.
by statute, or by ordinance now, they have to do it through the public body.
Right,
Right.
right. For example, just to give you an example, I made this change to the ordinance. The ordinance basically says that, as it's currently written, I think it says that you're required to hook up if you're
Mhm.
on the sewer, or
Yeah.
150 feet from the sewer, something to that effect. And I changed that, and I said, well, you're required to hook up if the sewer commission orders you to hook up. The reason for that is, somebody may wanna come in with a 150 unit project, and the sewer commission doesn't have the capacity to do it, but the ordinance says they are obligated to hook up. So I changed that to say, well, you're obligated to hook up if the commission determines it has capacity in the pipe and in the treatment plant.
So that,
That was, and I actually had a case involving that, where some guy came in with a 250 unit project, 4 buildings, and the sewer commission was gonna give him the permit, but he actually put a lawsuit to, seeking an injunction, because that's what the ordinance in that town said, that was Brookfield. And so I changed that, and I thought I should change it for you too, cause you don't have a very big plant, there's not a lot of
Right.
extra capacity there. So something like that was a change, and I tidied up the enforcement ability.
Mm-hmm.
But substantively, it's pretty much the same as, of the enabling legislation, it's pretty much the same of what, it's worded differently, more modernly perhaps, but it's not much different, really.
So doing this sort of technical review, I think we could do it at any time of day. I can't imagine anybody
They want them.
would, wanna sit and slog through this with us, so, let's look at the last, not next week, but the week after, last week of January.
The last week, meaning 27th through 31st?
I am away that week, but back Thursday,
Thursday's,
so
That's the
Friday,
30th,
so
I'll be on
Friday.
afternoon shift on the 30th.
what is
so,
the 31st looking like for everybody?
I can make that happen during the day.
Okay.
Or after 6, after actually 6:30.
Okay. Ed,
After 1 o'clock, but it depends on the weather too.
okay,
So why don't we set it for that Friday? At 1 o'clock you can do, or 1:30? This gives you room.
1:30 is better.
Okay.
let's do.
How long do you think shouldn't take super long?
I
mean, I can't,
We're all read up and
Yeah,
all
right.
read up and you have your questions.
really
So-
coming with questions.
So 1:30? Okay.
So you're having a public hearing, did
Yeah.
you say?
Yeah,
And that's next week?
yeah, on the regs.
I'm sorry, on the regs,
On the regulations.
on these regulations,
On the regulations, yeah.
as put forward here in front of me. So-
Yeah,
Why don't we direct anybody with questions to go to you, so that we have those questions from anybody out there for our technical review? Does that make
Okay.
sense?
I mean, people can come.
I mean, you're gonna get the questions.
Yeah,
Right.
well, I think we're gonna, well, maybe, you don't know, we'll see if the public comes.
One would think.
Yeah. There's a hearing as well on the funding for the belt press next Thursday.
In addition,
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's 2 public hearings.
yeah.
Is that everything? Does that cover?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, do you guys know about the belt press?
Yes, oh,
Okay.
I don't, you use?
I, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I'm not sure the commission is going to adopt the regulations next week, but we, have a public hearing and see what comes up.
Probably not, we don't
Yeah.
have the correct verbiage.
We just have to make sure that the wording is exact before we can approve it.
Yeah, but you're gonna probably adopt the belt press resolution, right?
Correct,
Yeah,
hopefully,
okay.
that is the goal.
Okay.
Jeff, point of just process, how can the and I've had this conversation, how can the regulations be adopted by the sewer commission if the ordinance hasn't, like, I know that,
It's a chicken and egg problem.
exactly,
Yeah.
agree.
I mean, technically speaking, they have the right to adopt regulations,
Correct,
right now.
yeah,
But the ordinance has got a lot of stuff that's really regulatory. I think that, they probably won't, but I mean, I'd like to work them so they happen at the same time.
okay, all right, I just wanted to.
But in the
put that-
meanwhile, they've got the day-to-day problems of, for example, there's nothing in the ordinance about bootstraps
Mhm,
at all, so they got problems there.
mhm.
If somebody comes in with a restaurant, maybe other problems that I.
Right, but Torrington Area Health has it, don't they have any regulation?
Not on that, Not for,
grease
not
traps?
for, not for,
It depends what class restaurant it is.
But not for
If it's a
the-
class 3 or 4, then a grease trap is required.
By your ordinances or by?
By
By
Torrington.
Torrington Area Health?
And ours too, but
And yours as well.
definitely Torrington.
So you're talking about the other, for
well, I think
anything
it's,
that's,
I don't think Torrington Area Health regulates sewer, they regulate
No,
the
they
septic.
regulate grease traps.
Yeah, but they don't regulate grease traps for the sewer department. I think,
No,
So
they sort of
Kathy
do.
will contact the sewer commission, and they work closely together
Correct.
if there's an application.
right, but Jeff, Torrington Area Health has regulated that here in town.
okay, well.
They may not have the authority, but they have definitely done that, I know that for sure.
Me too.
The, well, I mean, there's a state regulation as well.
Well, all I'm saying is that, are they all lined up?
They should be,
Or
yeah.
are they not?
No, they should be lined up, I think they're all lined up, I think what we've drafted is lined up with the state, for sure.
And to Darlene's point, I'm sure the commission could adopt anything they want right
Yeah,
now,
Yeah,
but it has to go through the town with an ordinance to actually make sure that they're in effect, correct?
no,
So you can adopt anything you want and then do it?
the problem is that you have one, if they adopt they have an ordinance and they have a regulation, and, I mean, if you look at the definition of slug in one, and maybe there's not a definition in the other, it just creates a nightmare to try to administer against two different documents.
Well, I understand that, I'm talking about process.
Process, they have a right to adopt regulations, they have a right to adopt regulations.
But they have the right to act on those if indeed it's part of an ordinance, of which has already been done by the town, so to change that, that's why you're coming to us. So I guess where I'm going is process-wise, on Darlene's thread is, you can adopt what you want, but you really have to go through the process of separating them out so that we know
Correct.
what and how they're doing it.
The problem is that you have a set of regulations, you have a set of ordinances, and they're inconsistent, it creates trouble.
I think I understand the problem.
Okay, so we're trying to separate
Yeah.
we wanna separate the regulatory stuff out of the ordinance and put that in regulations.
Got it.
And going forward, that will make the sewer commission much more efficient. It will be able to adopt regulations to deal with problems as they arise, once every couple of years or once a year, whenever, it just takes a public hearing and a vote. And they'll be a lot happier and much more efficient in the end, I think. Cause I get calls all the time, not all the time, I get calls regularly, how should we address this, cause it's not covered. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
So, see you on the 31st?
All right.
Thanks.
Would you want me to talk to Randy about make sure he's aware of the date, so it's done?
No, he knows, yeah, I do.
Okay, all right, okay, thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is cell tower. I don't have much to report other than the balloon float and the boom. Work is scheduled to be done for Saturday. We are facing some not so cooperative weather on Saturday, so just keep your eyes on the website, the town website, and the blast email that we send out, for any postponement. I haven't heard anything, but I'm gonna call them in the morning and just see where they are, and probably will check in every day as the week progresses. Have spoken with Randy, and he knows that should they put that application in, that we're gonna be requesting party status, so that we're prepared for that as we move.
Okay, I think were there two other points, one you were gonna call Homeland and speak to them
About delaying,
about delaying,
and the siting council, I have to call them.
so you have not, okay.
No, it's,
Okay, it's just,
a lot.
and then the other one was, what was the other component? I have it, I should have written it down, I'll remember it. But there was another action we were gonna take. Oh,
I haven't heard back from Dee.
you were also going to, I think you got, data and information of environmental, some sort of professional, who was it? And you were gonna get that information
Todd,
from Todd
yes.
Powell?
Yep.
Did you get that?
Nope.
You haven't received that from him yet?
Yes, I have received it, I haven't done anything with it. just,
So you're gonna,
yep, I will pop all that back up on my priority list.
okay, because that'll be an agenda item for the next meeting, I would imagine. Okay.
Next we have, just a bunch of, reports that were submitted. Donna is,
Thank you.
can I, Donna is here. Did you wanna add anything to the report that you submitted?
Well, there's two there for December 2nd,
Mhm.
you know, it's just, and then I can update the January one.
Yeah, did you wanna talk about that at all, or?
The application in front of the zoning regulations to change, add definitions of retail stores. It's regarding the gun sales, that was actually, the commission made a change to the proposed new regulation and it was adopted. So the regulations will be changed effective, January 27th, I believe is the date. So there'll be a new regulation on that.
The,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, and it's just more curiosity, but the rationale, the application for a reverting, change of use from a single family to an accessory dwelling convalescent home,
Right,
was that based on the fact that it's not a convalescent home, or?
it was based on a couple of things, but the main thing that it was based on was the fact that we did not have enough information about exactly what it was he was gonna be doing there. He came in with a proposed use, but couldn't prove that that's what they were gonna be doing.
Okay.
So, commission decided that they didn't have enough information to make an informed decision, so they denied.
Mhm.
The Kent School Corporation, addition to the existing admissions building, that was actually, approved at the past meeting.
Okay.
We worked closely with the fire department to make some changes to the site plan. So that's a condition of approval that a new site plan is gonna be submitted before they get their zoning permit, which they're working on currently now.
Thank you. Oh, and, it's good that new chairman has taken over, and
Yep.
I think we should all thank the years of service that John Johnson put in, and 30 years of.
30-something, right?
Yeah.
Is it-
It was 30 years on January 3rd.
And,
That's when he was officially appointed, so that's when it officially took effect.
While that happened after our watch, I think we should just appreciate all the years of hard work that he's done.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
We've got Matt Winter is the new chairman,
Mm-hmm.
Wes Byrick is the new vice chair, and Mark Weingarten is the secretary treasurer. So, we also elevated an alternate into, John's open position, so I will have an alternate position that's open. I do have somebody in mind that I'd like to contact, and depending on what he says. If he turns me down, then I'd like to put a blurb in your next newsletter, for people who are interested to go ahead and submit something to me, and then have them come and chat with the commission.
Was there anything, did you wanna just do a quick brief on the cease and desist?
The cease and desist order that was placed on 10 North Main Street has been rescinded. He took the signs down. So, it was a shame that it had to go that far. I've been working on it with him since the end of October, but I had no choice. So, and then the violation that's up at Camp Kenmont Kenwood, they came in actually today to fill out the paperwork to get those buildings actually legalized. They put up 2 changing sheds that are like 20 by 40, down by the lake. So they violated inland wetlands, and they violated the special permit through zoning. And they ran the electric without permits and they had no building permits, so. The new director and the assistant director came in to see me today, so we're gonna start that process going on January 27th.
And is it something that you think that they just willfully did and or just didn't, it was just sort of not understanding what and should they do? Has that camp ever taken out a permit to do something?
Yes, they have.
They have, so they know that those are the regulations, somebody decided to just move ahead.
I think they've had, a number of changes in the directorship.
Okay,
And the person that I met today is actually brand new, he just started, I think, on Monday, yesterday maybe,
welcome.
or Friday, exactly. So I think that there's just a lot of changes to, the person that we were dealing with when we found out about this left, and then the position was empty, and so he now is in there, and, so he'll have to remedy the situation.
Yeah, I guess where I'm going is there something that the town can do to sort of help some of these entities that may not have a real connection to town because they sort of operate on their own world and, remind them that there are certain steps and things you have to do. I don't know.
I think for the most part, they absolutely understand what they need to do. This was a new guy who just didn't realize that this is what he was supposed to be doing and felt like he could. So if you wanna get a company to actually get in touch with me and tell me that they have a new director, then that's what you're gonna have to do. But I don't have the time to go out there and find out who is new director and say, oh, by the way,
No, I'm not.
you need to go to zoning if you're gonna do anything. So-
No, I'm not suggesting that. What I'm suggesting is, at some point, at any point, reminding the big operations in town that, even the smallest of things that you do have to come through the building process.
Mhm.
That's all. I mean, an email once a year, a reminder to all heads of facilities. Something that's just gonna keep that presence of mind. I'm not suggesting you physically go out and do any of that, no, or take it on yourself, but, I think part and parcel, there is a responsibility from the town to promulgate and to remind people of processes, because people get lost in them. People think, we'll deal with this later down the road with the, so to speak, with the crosswalks. Plenty of people don't understand how crosswalks work. Reminders, the state does reminders all the time. Anyway, that's my little thought on that.
You saw Leslie submitted a report about a conference she went to.
Got that.
Annual Connecticut Park and Rec Association Conference.
So, while I know conferences are good, I've been to them myself, I think it would be nice to see how they translate into, Kent, Connecticut. Because when you go to conferences, if I go to a Realtor conference, some of the stuff just not, that I would attend, really is not germane. Sometimes it's good networking, sometimes it's good to hear whatever things, but, specifically what is being brought back to the commission, and what is the commission saying, yes, we wanna act on something like that. Just generally speaking, I think that would be helpful to understand, what we're getting out of some of these.
I think I pass it along to the commission. As far, I think, big conferences are often more about just that, having the presence, seeing what else is happening in the, in your field. And maybe not as much, coming back with a specific programmatic, like the programmatic proof, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, she talked about the new movement with swimming pools as an example.
How could that apply?
Is that going to translate to something Park and Rec is thinking about, yes or no?
Mhm.
It sounds like it was a pretty good thing to do,
Mhm.
and I just wanna make sure that that's getting translated back and then it gets translated to us, to me, that, I know it happens in other departments, it seems like, oh, I learned this, and it's something I consider doing.
Mhm.
I think because there is another body in between us, maybe we just don't hear it, maybe it's happening, we just don't hear it.
Right, it's just happening at that commission level. So we have a number of appointments that we need to make.
Mm-hmm.
The Housatonic, I always forget the acronym, Housatonic, Recovery, Resource Recovery Authority, HRRA. It's not ex officio, so Bruce had to resign, which he did, and so we need to appoint, me, in theory, as the new designee or what do you call it, Kent's representative, which is, has an unexpired term ending 6/30/2020, so it'll be for the 6 months. Would need to be in the form of a motion.
Mm-hmm. So we have two motions, one, we have to
Yes.
Except,
accept Bruce's resignation and then yours. I make a motion that we accept Bruce Adams' resignation from HRIA, effective today.
any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. Your turn, Ed.
Oh, okay. I would make the motion to appoint Gene Speck to the HRA unexpired term ending 6/30/2020.
I'll second that.
Unless anybody else wants to be that representative. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. The next is to appoint Melissa Chernisky to an unexpired vacant that's tough, Conservation Commission member position with a term ending 12/6/2021, and I'll make that motion.
Second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next is to appoint Mike Van Valkenburg to an unexpired vacant zoning board of appeals alternate position with a term ending 11/16/2021, and I'll make that motion as well.
I'll second it.
Motion seconded by Ed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those are all of our appointments. Next, so there was, Eversource Energy, there's an annual sort of reauthorization through, Eversource. Joyce, can you, I'm sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot. That document,
It was a document that Bruce had signed, and then they sent down a change, and Jean signed it, and now they need authorization, or they need a motion made stating that Jean has authority to sign a document.
it was a technical change that went through Randy DeBella. He authorized, he
Correct.
approved, he reviewed it, and we sent it off, and then they came back and said,
Who's Jean?
who's Jean, and
Got it.
it has to be in a set of meeting minutes that
That you are.
that person. So,
And I'm just curious, what's American Tower Corporation? Is that just the name of it?
Go ahead.
They're the ones that have the cell tower site at the garage now. Eversource is putting up a building, and there was a request for an increase in the land plot so that they can fit a propane tank in there.
I like
That's
this.
working.
All right, let me just follow that path. So the tower was owned by whom?
Originally Verizon put it up, but which name they were working under at the time, but since then American Tower has bought out.
So American
Or
Tire
local
acquires whomever, and they have come to us now.
They came to us with Eversource Energy wants to put a building in there in the cell tower site.
A building within their footprint.
Yep, within the footprint, that was okay, but there wasn't enough room for a propane tank in there, so they asked for a request to move the fence out in one corner so there was room for a propane tank.
And that was the change
That
that
was the change in the lease, so
happened
that had to,
after, that literally was, it came from Randy. Randy said, it's fine, sign it, get it into them, I signed it, sent it in, they sent us an email saying, we can't accept this person as the authorized
Well,
signer
I get
because she's
that,
the
now I
first
follow the
selectman.
path. Does, you guys, I know it's a town property and we exempt ourselves from ourselves, but, is that something that you guys, I mean, you have ordinance, you have regulations for cell towers, is there anything that you guys, you think have any issues or concerns with on that?
Even if I did, it wouldn't make any difference. Your guys are exempt from zoning.
Well, I know we are, but being exempt doesn't mean to say you can't regulate yourself.
Yes, it does. There's an ordinance that says that the town of Kent is exempt from zoning regulations. So if you are butting up against a setback, there's nothing that I can do because the town has decided that you are exempt from the zoning regulations, so they don't apply. So they don't come to me for any of that. They came to me as a courtesy to let me know that they're gonna be putting up this little box. It's actually gonna house a generator and then you need the propane for the generator backup. But to me, they just came to me as a courtesy and it's
Okay.
on town property.
Okay.
So,
Will other people use that propane tank or just
Every user has their own tank.
every user does? It's kinda crazy.
Yeah.
And Eversource, what, has an antenna up there?
Not yet, as far as I know. I don't know what they plan on putting there, but
So if they put an antenna up, are they gonna pay the town for that, or because they're a public utility?
every time a new user goes on, I believe our lease says we get more money, but that's between American Tower and the town.
That's what I mean, it's between them and us.
Eversource would deal with American Tower, and then American Tower deals with us.
Okay. How many propane tanks are there now?
I think I only got one for Verizon, the other one I believe is diesel.
Oh, okay.
So you need a motion from us, that you are authorized to sign this. So moved.
I'll second it.
Discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Next is the budget. Barbara reported to me a little while ago, the initial documents are due to the treasurer by this Friday, close business. They're coming in, a full document will be compiled and distributed to us by the end of the month. And then we'll need to start our, budget workshops. And the first one should be, scheduled for the second week in February, so I thought we would look at that since we know time passes. There's a board of selectmen meeting on the 11th of February.
Yes, there is.
Do you want to, back it up to that?
So what do we usually do workshops, we usually do,
That one is.
4?
Well, there's,
we did 4,
there's 3 with a 4th if needed.
okay.
And the first one is department heads.
So, and then, so we just have to back this up, we do this every year, but,
Reverse engineering.
yeah, so we wanna have this to, the Board of Finance when? Because then we have to get it into April where it's secured,
So the,
the hearing.
the final, according to the budget schedule, the final board of selectmen vote should take place in that time slot of the potential 4th workshop.
Yeah,
And then, the Board of Finance March meeting, which is the 3rd Tuesday, is when we present it to the Board of Finance.
okay, so the 16th is of March, I have the third Wednesday, third Monday as the 16th of March.
3rd Tuesday.
I'm sorry, third Tuesday is the 17th of March, St.
And then
Patrick's Day.
the Board of Finance final vote is by the end of April,
Right,
and then the public hearing needs to be the first week of May.
right, okay. All right, so that tracks pretty well. So, so we can start workshops, we can do 10th, 17th, and 24th weeks, right?
So the three would be done each week.
Okay. And then if we need to, we can go into March, that first week in March. But usually we don't need to. So I think if you wanna try to tackle it, I'm sorry, when will they be back? When will all the data, the information?
She said she would have
What's the
it,
date that
by
she
the
said
end
she
of the
would have?
month,
The end
so
of,
by the 31st of January.
okay, so do you wanna try to shoot for the 3rd, 10th, and 17th? It gives at least a little time.
Puts us ahead of schedule, if you wanna sort of shoot for
Doesn't
that.
matter to me.
or With the option for scheduling issues.
Traditionally, don't you meet with each of the departments ahead of time? Is that usual? No?
You all meet with them.
You all?
No, I know we've done, but the first selectman has never sat down and.
No.
I mean, is that something that you might wanna do? I don't know. I
Possibly.
mean, here's my thinking in it, is your day-to-day operations, we're not.
Mhm.
So if you had an understanding, and then when we meet, could also discuss with us on as to what and how. To me, that might, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there. Would that be productive?
It might be redundant.
For whom?
For us.
For the boards, for the different
Right.
Well, it'll
departments?
be redundant for us and it'll be redundant for Jean.
But I think you're saying it might give me better,
Yeah, I
a better
mean-
knowledge base when we're,
I guess, I mean, my instincts are if I were doing it, I'd sit down with each department head and talk it through. Those are my instincts.
well,
But,
so we would need to move it out a week,
mhm.
go back to the 10th, because I would need that week of the 3rd.
And, you know, just because I suggest it doesn't mean it has to, I mean, it's, if you feel that that's.
Let's do it for the 10th, the 7th, no, we can't do it for the 17th, but the week, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th week of February, to give me that week.
So the 10th, 17th, and 24th
Those weeks.
weeks, okay. Do you want to look at your schedule and pick the right dates and then float them to us, or do you want to pick them now?
Let's pick them now, and then we can go back to the department heads and to the grantees and.
So Ed, you're the one that usually has the,
The 10th is alright in the afternoon, but I'll be on the morning shift. I'll be on the afternoon, the 17th and 24th.
Well, the 17th is a federal holiday.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that would probably be tough for.
I'll be off, I could come then.
Can't have the meeting.
Nice try.
So,
so I'd prefer to do it later in the week of that first week,
the week of the 10th,
yeah,
okay,
Would be
I'm out
my-
of the office Thursday.
Thursday.
Mhm.
So I could do it Tuesday,
Or Wednesday,
or maybe even,
or Friday.
yeah, Friday
Tuesday,
would probably be
Wednesday,
better.
You wanna do it Friday?
If you're gonna do department heads Friday,
Valentine's Day?
Yeah.
Say that again.
if you're
You
gonna
might
meet with
be
the
shut.
department heads, some departments aren't open on Friday, so it depends on who you're meeting with,
Yeah,
what
you'd
day
have
you
to
need to
juggle it
schedule.
around.
That's right.
So Tuesday, Wednesday.
Tuesday, you're already meeting at
Right, we're meeting at 6:30 on Tuesday.
So, we're saying Friday's too tough,
Well, Friday, some departments are not open.
so let's choose the ones that are.
And I'll be switching back to afternoons probably on that day also.
And then
I'd have to look it
we'll
up.
meet with the rest of them the 2nd.
Yeah, I mean, it's just slotting in when people can do it, that's all it
Right.
is saying, yeah, I mean, it's clear that some people aren't around and some people aren't.
Okay, so,
Cause we're not determining tonight who's sitting
Right.
right,
on those dates, we're just saying the workshops. So let's just pick that. Is okay, Friday the 14th, all right? It's good for me, I
It's
guess.
good for me. What time is good for you?
Okay.
What time frame is good for you?
I have to look and see when I switch back. I think I switch on that day back to afternoon shift.
So what is that?
That's,
Just tell me what
that
time.
means I work 12 to 12, 7:30
Okay, so you could do.
on morning.
Okay.
Yep.
So you wanna just schedule it for 9 o'clock?
Yeah, I can be here 2 hours.
Well, it's
I have to
they're
be
typically
back.
only half-hour slots, aren't they?
Yeah,
They're not?
right.
All right, so 9 o'clock. February 14th is the first one.
Okay.
17th is a holiday. I think I'm pretty free the next, yeah. 20th is it's not preferred, so I could do it, Tuesday. I could actually do it Thursday and Friday on that week.
Tuesday the 18th then?
That's afternoon shift, so.
Okay, that works for me.
So what is that mean? Are you available in the morning?
Mm-hmm.
Wanna do the same time?
Yep, sure.
So that's the 18th at 9 o'clock?
Yep. And let's pick one more. Mardi Gras or Ash Wednesday?
Huh?
Mardi Gras or Ash Wednesday?
Really?
That's the week of 24th.
I'm free pretty much that week right now.
We got it.
Don't think
I don't know my
anything.
schedule. I have to look up and see. I didn't bring it with me. Let me see. Yeah, the 24th I'll be on there, so it can be in the morning again.
24th, is that Monday?
Mm-hmm.
You wanna do Monday? Is that what you're saying?
Let's do Monday at 9 o'clock again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, at least what my experience is, sometimes the department can't come, so
All right.
we'll catch them, maybe move them around and stay a little later, or,
But your time, you need to be on the road at 11.
Yeah, we can figure it out. It's flexible.
Okay.
Can you tell me again, when is the information due back to Barbara, because I never got that date.
Friday.
This coming Friday?
Yep.
Okay, so everything needs to be back on the 17th?
Jean, normally you have one meeting at night to meet with the 10,000 grant recipients, 10,000 plus grant recipients.
Mhm.
You wanna change one of those to an evening, or do you wanna, oh, you can't.
Well, one, it's hard in the departments, it's during the,
You wanna add one then,
yeah,
for the grantee?
I think, is it nighttime? I don't know.
It's usually like, isn't it?
Night.
Late
Is it
afternoon,
night?
early
Late
evening?
afternoon.
I mean, like the fire department always comes later.
This was a whole 30 meeting.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it might have been like a 6:30 meeting, I don't know,
Okay.
but it was definitely.
I can't remember honestly, so.
Do you wanna, we have a Board of Selectmen meeting on the 11th, do you wanna do a 5:30 on that day? 5:30 to 6:30 with see if we can get the library and the fire department?
I'm not sure I can be there.
Oh, because of the.
I have a sewer meeting.
You can watch us.
I could watch you. I mean,
That's it.
if you're gonna meet with them, I mean, we could make it work. I'm pretty sure we'll, I mean, if you do 5:30, I should be okay.
Well, we're doing this, so hold on a sec, we're doing 10th, 17th, 24th week. Why don't we put the grants the week before? Because you really don't need that time,
The 3rd, the week of the 3rd.
it's like the 3rd. That make sense?
Yep.
So then we'll get the grants out of the way, and then be able to meet with the departments. And that's,
It's the first Monday of the month, isn't it?
and so that will be at night though, or in the evening, or closer to correct?
A little tied up for one day, are you?
Mhm.
Just a little busy.
I'm sorry?
The fire.
They're a little busy, he's
Fire
a
meeting
little
first
busy.
Monday of the month.
Oh, you're
But-
busy, oh, so you can't do that day, too. So what day is good
It
for
might be
you?
able to, because if it's early in the what's night considered?
Fire department meeting is at 7.
All right,
Well, the fire department has to come and meet with us, so
Right.
it seems silly that we do it on the same night that they have to meet, so I'd say we move it. Let's pick a different day.
What's your schedule looking like, Ed?
I'm all right the first 2 weeks in February. In the
Time.
afternoon.
So you could do on the 4th, in theory, you could do,
We can start it like at 4:30, cause it's the library who comes, the cemetery association, the
Ken-
children's center,
Children's Center.
and then the fire department, so generally the fire department's last, but the other three are usually pretty
Pretty.
accommodating, 4:30, 5 o'clock, it doesn't need to be
That's what
super
I said.
late, Ed, so.
so on the 4th,
Tuesday the 4th.
and we'll do 4:30 to 6:30.
Yeah, then we'll slot them.
Are you gonna meet with any of the department heads at night if we have to bring our commission chairman?
I think we should, yeah. Yeah, so I think if it's determined that that makes sense, then yeah, let us know what their schedules are, because obviously Matt's out of town most of the time. I don't know, for,
And it probably would be
Park
Matt
and
and
Rec is-
John and Lynn
right. John,
Johnson.
is he still on,
No, he's not, but I'd like him out there.
Transition.
I'm sorry?
I would like to have him there as part of the transition.
Oh, okay.
So can, do you think we should set a 5th now? Or do we wanna,
No, I think you,
in the ask, we'll just put it out there if departments need flexibility on.
I think we can do that, we have time.
All right, well then what I'll do is I'll send a doodle poll out to all of you, plus to Lynn, to John and Matt,
Okay,
with a
so-
couple of different dates
Sure.
during the weeks of, what did we say, 10, 17, and 24 February.
And do we need to do that for Park and Rec? Let them know that too?
Or you could just incorporate them, you're already meeting on the 4th in the evening, just stretch it till 7:30, and then you get 2 more slots.
Right.
I mean, if that works, I don't know, if you guys,
Yeah, I would have to check and see.
but tentatively, instead of scheduling a whole nother meeting,
So-
if they know in advance.
Do you want me to give them that date as well?
Yeah, that would be great, I think, because
2,
then
4 at,
it's a problem, then we can switch it up.
So we'll keep the last, hour, and we'll extend it to 7:30, and we'll keep that last hour, hour and a half, so the last 3 slots maybe, for the
Yeah.
ones
That
who
and
and
Park
need
and
to
Rec.
bring commissions with them, does that make sense?
Yeah. I think there are only 2, right? Park and Rec and, is there anyone else? Because you cover wetlands and
wetlands, planning and
zoning
zoning, but we didn't ever include ZBA, so.
CBA.
And I don't, I mean, then we have to figure out too what you wanna do with Joe for his budget as well. Cause he's only here Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just throwing it out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, we have, one Tuesday, correct? We have the 18th, so that's where you wanna slot him in there. He's in Tuesdays, you said?
3 to 4.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 3 to 4.
Tuesday, Thursday. We don't have a Wednesday or Thursday meeting, do we? We haven't scheduled it.
Nope.
Are you anticipating a discussion needing to be taking place? I mean, or is it pretty status quo, do you have any idea?
I have no idea.
I mean,
I gave him the budget worksheet and he looked at it, but
I mean, it might be a non-issue, you know, I don't think you're overscheduling, I mean, he might come in with a flat budget and not necessarily need to meet with you, so.
That's why it would be good to,
yeah, that's fine, I'm just letting, you know,
Yeah,
that's,
that's good to know.
my world is, that's what it's like.
Okay.
so again, it's my experience that, I know Bruce has sent out a letter to each of the departments. Did they send that same letter out? Do you know?
No,
No,
So,
it was supposed to be from the three of you, and Barbara had, at the last meeting, discussed that she sent out the forms without a cover letter because she hadn't, you guys hadn't met yet, so there's no cover letter with it.
the rest of that cover letter was one that was just generated year after year after year. I don't think a lot of discussion, but was really more the expectation of the board to the departments. And that expectation typically was trying to hold things flat, or trying to have low to moderate growth, or whatever it is. I don't think we ever got to, hey, just rip it up, and do whatever you can do. I think it was more a tone. So, I don't really honestly have an opinion as to, I think the departments have all been, whether asked or on their own, have done a good job at, keeping their budgets within very, very slow growth, and asking when there are things that they really truly believe they needed to have. So,
Okay.
I don't think they have a problem with that. I don't think you guys.
Next is there's this 2019 Homeland Security grant, so this is,
I'm sorry to just punch you back. I didn't know you finished the capital plan under the budget. You delivered it to the board.
I'm sorry, yes, I
Of
delivered it
Finance.
to the Board of Finance and they accepted it. They had just some questions, so we went over basically what we covered here. And,
And I'm sure they, at least what I read, they had some reaction to it, that we sent them something so high, and that we, I don't know, should have known better, is while they've had a practice of a certain number, is that, I'm anticipating them kicking that back to us. Do they have, when they kick that back to us, a number in mind as to what they wanna keep? And if so, what is the rationale behind it, so that when we make the decision of who's and what's and where's, we understand what their rationale is. So I don't wanna get into a push me, pull you situation with them. The expectation, I know, at least from what I recall when I was on board, was always to try to keep that mill rate, moderate, but we're coming down off of huge expenditures with respect to bonds. And so maybe this is an opportunity, maybe it isn't, to have that dialogue as to capitalize what we're doing.
yeah,
Because clearly there's a need in the capital. And I know from experience, we can push one or two, three things around, but you can't push everything out,
Right.
because it just, it's gonna be there.
they didn't have a number that they, from what I've heard, that they do have, in general, a number that they wanna stick to, but they didn't articulate that. My guess is that will probably happen next month, or.
Well, we're gonna present it at the town meeting. But at that point, typically we'd like to get that thing cleaned up as soon as possible. Okay, I'm done with the budget.
Next is the Homeland Security grant, so this isn't, it's not a grant that comes to us, it is, it's grant monies that the COG uses to, push forth programs and the agenda that is set by the COG, which is all those towns. So there are two attachments in your packets that we need motions on. One of the first one that the COG has been working on is a regional animal shelter facility. There's been long-standing discussion through the COG, and I assume that Bruce was keeping you posted about creating a regional facility in Torrington.
Okay.
And it saves everybody a lot, it's gonna save all the towns money. And this is really just a, procedural piece. They went forward, they're continuing to move forward, and this is so that they can, get those monies from that, what is it called, the Regional Performance Incentive Program, to fund this animal
Right.
shelter.
So, this is the first I've heard of it, so, the question is, so COG has set up an animal, or proposing to set up an animal shelter?
Well, it's gonna be Torrington, the city of Torrington
The
is going
city of
to,
Torrington,
is
is-
going to, it's gonna be there.
okay,
But COG doesn't run
okay.
or stand up any
And has
physical.
COG voted
Yeah.
to actually, be part of that?
Yes, in the past. I don't know when. Pre-me.
So does the town of Kent have to do anything, I mean, it's an animal shelter for, like, the dog pound, we take our dogs there?
I'm not 100% sure.
Oh, okay.
This is, it's not monies that are coming from the town. There's no,
No, I see, I understand the money, and I'm trying to say what's the goal? The goal is to create an animal shelter. I just get this one little email that says, you know, that there was a resolution
mhm.
that was passed. Please note, the previous RPI, Regional Animal Facility, I guess, regional, what's the RP,
The Regional Performance Incentive Program,
Okay.
RPIP.
application, resolution approved by the Board of Selectmen and City Council of all, they call it the Northwest, no, it's a NH term, what's that?
COG, the Northwest Hills.
Northwest Hills Congress, isn't it? Request to endorse proposal. So they haven't even, that proposal hasn't come to us. Or does it go to, I'm just confused as to how it happens.
I don't.
In the email, it's, and I'm pretty sure I attached it too, it says, while not all towns will be actively participating in the two projects, it's important that
That
all
all
the
towns.
region, right,
100% in it.
right, so it is important that the region be united in support of these two priority projects. So they're asking you to adopt these resolutions so that the towns that have put forth the request for the grant money to do their projects can move forward with it. If we don't accept these resolutions, it kind of puts a
how-
wrench in
okay,
it.
that's how I read it,
Yeah.
but why would the town of Kent, are we going to participate in this? It was my first question. Whomever builds this, one, and two, if we're not, why are we tying ourselves to a application? And the only reason would be for a united front, but do you actually need a united front?
Yes,
You have to, so if we
Yes.
said no,
yes,
it's gone.
yes.
Okay, so we're gonna be we don't know whether we're gonna be part of this animal shelter.
When you say part of, what do you?
Well.
We're not gonna bring our dogs there, correct? No.
Yeah, so it's an animal shelter, or is it a place where, we have a dog pound, right?
It's not a rescue facility,
It's not like if my dog's picked up on the street, they go to Torrington,
correct.
okay. So it's just and I know it's clear you don't know exactly.
I mean,
Again.
I don't know what the ramifications are if we table this, so I can bring back more information. But I don't have a lot of, I don't have specifics on what the shelter is going to specifically be. I know that it will provide benefit to, like, if our little pound here gets full, then we would have use of that.
They need to be back to her by February 14th, no later than February 14th.
So my question would be, if we
We could put out a
If we
February
do
meeting.
projects with COG, all the other COG towns would sign the same exact thing
That is my
to
guess.
receive funds ourselves. Correct?
Because they are the grant applicant,
Correct.
so the grant applicant
Right.
has to have all members sign, that makes sense to me.
Right, so I really don't have a problem with it.
Right,
As
so
long as
if
that's
we
the way
were
it's worked,
doing-
and they would sign stuff for us
Mhm.
Right,
regardless of
that's exactly
where.
what it is.
where it falls on who gets the use of it, cause we wouldn't ask Torrington or another neighboring town if we wanted to use
Yeah.
COG money for something that they could come and use it.
I get that, I just don't, I don't understand if there's any implications to a grant, so if they do. You know, if you don't follow through on a grant, if you do something wrong in a grant, it comes back to you, and then what the heck happens? Do we end up having to pay? Do you see what I mean?
I see what you're saying.
You know, what is, if we're tying ourselves to an obligation, which I get is a united front, and I know that it's sort of a quid pro quo, but what happens if it all goes bad? Because you gotta think about when it all goes bad, because it can go bad. So I just don't understand, and I think we had, if we have to the 14th, we have to the 11th to figure out all that information, just to make sure that what we're signing is something that we feel comfortable about and we can back up. I looked at this and I was just like, this doesn't really give me much. That makes sense?
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not opposed to it, I just don't understand it.
So I'll come back with more information.
Yeah, and I think maybe let me maybe pacify people who read it in the paper. I'm not opposed to it, I just think our due diligence should be a little bit more on this to make sure that we have.
No, I agree, because it does say a few things in here, so. So, tabling that?
Yep.
The next one is, for the REPT grant funding. So there's the fiscal year 2019 Homeland Security Grant Program. There's an MOA, which is, there's a one-pager with a resolution.
Mm-hmm. So memorandum of agreement, I got it. Mm-hmm.
That basically allows the REPT to, it allows us to participate in the regional emergency planning team gets funding from Homeland Security. So from feds down to the state, the REPT gets funding. And we need to sign this MOA, which we do every year. It's, again, this is procedural in order to allow our emergency management to apply for these grants. It's like a sub-grant sort of thing. So
And this
Suzie
is-
may apply for some sort of emergency management widgets, but in order to be able to apply for them, we have to have an MOA with Dennis.
And who makes those applications? Is it our emergency?
Emergency management could make them, the fire department could make them.
So anybody under the emergency,
The what's the word I'm looking for, what you can purchase, like, you can't buy pianos with, you can't apply to
No,
buy
I get
pianos
it.
with REPT money. So it has to do with emergency management and,
right, it was
disaster
just,
response and
Mhm.
all that sort of stuff.
And that's the RRIP?
REPT,
REP.
Regional Emergency Planning Team.
And the
So
dates,
each-
the date's wrong on this one, because it says federal fiscal year 2019. On the memorandum of agreement
Yeah, that's
regarding use of
weird.
federal fiscal year 2019
I'm
state.
not saying that came
Homeland
right from Dennis.
And it says 2019 up on the top of it.
Yeah, and the resolution is for, well, it's dated for today, but, yeah, I think that's their error.
Yeah. So that'll have to get changed.
Oh, and you know what is fiscal year, they don't look at it as, you say, the ending year, right? Isn't it in the converse, where federal fiscal year is actually 19 through 20?
You mean like ours,
All right, you're working on it.
like ours, which, and the fiscal year 19 ends June 1st, June,
20th.
The federal year is different, it's October through
Yeah.
September.
so I don't understand.
We would have to ask them, but I know that it's it's leaning forward, it's for the next fiscal year. It sort of surprises me that they would make it.
But I would think it's listed on every page, so,
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know.
I don't know.
And so who would make these grants? The town of Kent? Because it's
Emergency management.
under the town of Kent,
Mm-hmm.
right? So whoever the head of emergency management or the fire department could say, and this just gives them authorization to do that.
Correct.
All right, so are the dates right or wrong?
So we need to authorize this resolution that's on this page.
All right, but we're concerned, or is there concern that the dates are wrong? So how about this? I make a motion that we authorize this MOA with Homeland Security Grant, and authorize you to sign that, Jean to sign that, subject to making sure the dates are correct.
I'll second that.
Like that.
Are you adopting this resolution? Is that what
This is
you're
the
doing?
acceptance
So
and
the
adoption
acceptance
of this
the resolution? Okay.
A memorandum of agreement.
You need to adopt this piece of paper.
Well, we have to
This is
sign
nice.
this piece of paper, right? You have to sign this,
Right,
and we have to adopt this. Both, correct?
no, we just need to provide this resolution to them.
The resolution authorizes you to sign it. I have to return both. In the instructions, I need both in order to return that document. So they have to agree that you can sign it, then you sign it, so.
So do we need two different motions?
No, I have two different things to do after you make the motion of this resolution.
And is the wording
So Chris's wording
proper?
is, instead of MOA, it would be of the resolution.
Of the resolution.
And then I'll
But
attach,
isn't what, of the resolution, let me just.
which
hold on.
authorizes her to sign the MOA.
Right.
That's,
I'll second that again.
Any discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We have a number of minutes to
Mhm.
approve, and we can approve them in one motion, or we can do 4 separate ones.
Regular meetings, yeah.
I would make a motion, we accept November 1st, 2019 special meeting minutes, November 6th, 2019 regular meeting minutes, November 26th, 2019 special meeting minutes, December 5th, 2019 special meeting minutes.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
State Road crosswalks. Oh, yeah. That
Mhm.
was,
It's a revised,
Crosswalks.
revised it.
which was fine.
I had a concern from a resident about the signs that go out in the crosswalks that, come in and go out. That they're not always out, that, it poses a potential dangerous situation. So the issue with those signs is that they're the town responsibility to put out and bring in. And right now, they go out at 7:30, and they come in at about 3. There was mention in the email about, with the school back in, session, Kent school back in session, there's a lot of foot traffic. Because so it also, the signs don't go out on the weekends, so it's Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 3. And it has to coincide with staffing, so we have one of the road crew does that task, and they're off at 3:30. And they're not, we don't have weekend staff, so it becomes an issue of who's gonna put them out and bring them back in, and should they be left out longer? Should they be not left out longer? How do we wanna proceed with this? They're about $340 a piece. They were replaced roughly 2 to 3 times last year. They get run over, they get stolen. But because it's on a state road, the liability is our liability by putting them out there, those signs out there.
So what's the liability if we don't put them out there?
State thing.
State law says you gotta stop if somebody's on the crosswalk.
Right.
That's what I'm saying, I mean,
We're not mandated to put them out.
correct.
It's through a encroachment.
And if you're not gonna put them out on weekends when you usually have the most people using them, then what's the use of putting them out during the week?
I think there are 2 issues. First is, we have a staffing issue in putting this thing in and out.
Yep.
Clearly, they're not out all the time, and that's because the person that puts them out is off work.
Right.
So if we wanna modify that, we're gonna have to modify that timing or pick another person.
Right.
The other question is, are they appropriate? Because it is a liability. We are in the state's right of way, doing something that is, I guess, allowed by law, but then we take on that that liability. I guess the bigger question I was asked is, do we think it slows people down? Does it, or stop people? I don't know what people's sense or feeling is. I mean, I have my own sense. I think it slows people down when they see someone standing there, then they see the sign. But I think, as I mentioned, I think there's a bigger issue. I pulled out of Bain Real Estate heading north, and I looked left, and nobody was there on the crosswalk, and I looked right, and there was a car parked just on the edge of the crosswalk. It was an SUV and the telephone pole, didn't see anyone. And as I'm going, this young woman from Kent School stepped into the crosswalk, and it was just, so I think part of the problem is that there's no clear visibility at times, not always, but at times. They're clearly marked, they've got the signs.
Yeah, I drove it this afternoon, and I think there's some desensitivity to those signs, because they're not as noticeable as I would have thought.
Well, there's a lot going on visually.
There's a lot,
Right.
yeah.
There's a lot going on
Yep.
visually. I don't know if you saw it, there was, of course, somewhere in Europe, they had painted the actual crosswalks in 3-dimensional.
There's actually
So weird, it looks like someone's floating across the crosswalk.
yeah, there's a couple of programs, I did some Google searching, and there are a couple of programs where you can paint where people have painted the lines different colors, where they've done that, painted them as 3D. I don't know what it would, but we'd have to do with DOT in order to, I think it'd probably be a permit or something, but a couple of them do look like they could use a fresh coat of paint, and we could certainly see, I don't know what it would take to have the DOT come in and put a fresh coat of paint on them. The other piece is where the crosswalk is on 341 coming out of Elizabeth Street. The cut is too tight if the barrel, we call it a barrel, is in the crosswalk, so you can't put, for the school buses, So the
Can't
barrel,
turn.
yeah, so the barrel has gone how much further?
So you usually at least adjust on the side where she's standing.
Okay, so, just, operationally, that one isn't out in the crosswalk. So it just seems that there's a lot of, like fits and starts to, there's not a really true standard of when it's out, when it's not out. And I don't think that's due to anybody's, shortcoming. But I think also the fact that it's only Monday through Friday, that we missed the afternoon school rush, and the liability piece, I'm just not sure if it's the right solution. And as we move down with the streetscape, as you've mentioned,
Mhm.
looking at having the signs with the flashing light, because there is so much going on there, that might do a better job. I don't have any data on any of these solutions,
Well, let's deal with things as
other
it
than
is.
a lot of people.
Are you concerned because it's in the right of way and that we're taking on a liability?
Mhm.
Yeah? Okay, I would concur. So I might recommend that we just pull them from the street and don't do them. That said, we still have an obligation, I think, to keep those sidewalks and those crosswalks safe.
Mhm.
I would put forward that you ask Andrew to police that
Mhm.
and heavily ticket anyone who is in a crosswalk, parked in a crosswalk, parked near a crosswalk. I think there's actually a distance that you have to be from the crosswalk.
There is.
Yeah.
There's like 4 feet.
I think it's like 10 feet.
25 feet.
Yeah, it's a
Something
long, it's a
25
long,
feet.
it's a long ways, and that's why we never had them painted. Because
Well-
it would cut the parking way down
Well-
on Main Street.
Wow.
I think that should be
I think
explored.
enforcement is.
I think that should be explored, and anything and everything we can do. At night, we've had issues with, with those crosswalks not being lit up well. And people jaywalk. I felt them. It's just it's a natural thing, but I think we really have to do our best to make sure that the crosswalks are done. That said, I also think, and Rick, you're gonna probably hit me with something, but we need to have those speed signs picked up and moved, and we need them to come in the beginning of Kent, coming into Kent from the north, coming into Kent from the south, coming in from Kent from the west and east. God forbid a fire truck ever tried to pull up fast, somebody comes whipping around that corner, you know who will lose, not the fire truck. Kent School, people fly over that bridge coming into town. I just think this general malaise, ignorance, I don't know what it is, of just sort of cluelessness of driving habits, but I think we need to stick these things up. I think we need heavy police enforcement. This town is not gonna get any less busy,
Right.
especially during Octobers, fall, spring, and summer. And I think it's just a matter of time before something tragic happens again, as it has 22 years ago, was it?
At least.
So I think the first bit of order is to just not put those out.
I have a question. Can they stay out all the time, or is that
No.
what you're talking about? They cannot?
The permit that we tried to get a copy of, but they purged her files. He's supposed to be sending us new information, but it had hours in it.
This is
So like
Hours
in
that
bad
they can be in the
weather,
highway.
it can't be out there because the state plows come down the road, and so
Yeah,
there are
that's-
times that it can't be in the road, and so it creates.
Well, the original permit, I know.
In
it was
Vermont, they
right.
can leave them out at night in the summertime.
So is there,
If you wanna
Could we-
explore the thing with the flashing signs,
Mhm.
you better do that now, because they're doing the streetscape plan, and
Right.
if you're gonna do that, we're gonna have to think about power and stuff like that for those crosswalks, unless they're all
Mhm.
solar.
Whose responsibility is to put lines where, to
State of Connecticut,
State of Connecticut. So, I'm sorry,
They won't do it.
they won't do it.
they will not do it if we ask them.
And if we ask to do it, then we have to do it the way they tell us to do it, and then we have to maintain it.
What does that mean? How does that, what do you mean by
If
that?
like the ones near the outside of, Lane Street, when they came on the seven.
Yeah.
Like towards Montserrat and south.
Right.
Hash lines there.
Yeah,
You used to have it on an angle, and they were yellow.
yeah,
When they repaved the road, we asked about putting them back, and they said they wouldn't do it. But if we did it again, it had to be white and straight, 90-degree to the lane.
so it had to be a 90-degree, I got it.
So, I mean, people have been parking over top of them for, well, summer too.
Yep, yep.
Even the only place, I think, I don't know if there's a sign that says no parking on the south end, but there's one in front of Montserrat's. And there used to be one going south, but at some point that got taken out of the sidewalk, and I don't remember if it got replaced or not. The state may put up a sign there that will say no parking from here to, they usually say from here to corner, but
Right,
if you don't have a corner in the mid crosswalk, mid-street crosswalk, then I don't know what the sign would say.
They have a little no person walking, and it says stop here on it now, for people in the crosswalk.
Yeah.
Just a little white with red around it sign, it says no, or stop, like, it says a stop sign, like, stop here for people in the crosswalk, or no parking sign.
well, there are only 2 crosswalks we're talking about that have that parking problem.
Actually, you're gonna have to have all 4 of them, but,
I'm
I
sorry?
mean, a couple of them, you have an intersection on one side, so nobody's gonna park in the middle of the intersection, you would hope.
Well, they have, and they've been hit. Coming around that monument, people who've ever parked right at Swift
Yeah.
have gotten whacked.
Mhm. Well, if they're parked within 25 feet of the intersection, they're.
Right, I guess my question is, while I'm perfectly happy to let the streetscape deal with crosswalks and lights and things like that, I think there's an obligation we have in the immediacy to, especially as we come into the springtime
Right.
And summertime, because clearly the sidewalks won't be done by then, that we do something. I don't know what, but we do something that's going to at least stop people from parking on or right near, because it's an accident.
So we'll hold the
I
barrels.
think the thing that you would have to do, you would request signs and markings to put up no parking signs,
From to you.
and Andrew can enforce that.
Oh, is that the reason you can't enforce it?
They can enforce it now because it's a state law,
Right,
but if you put up the signs and you're gonna lose probably 5 or 6 parking spots in town on all of them, then
mhm.
people are gonna have to realize that, and they might not realize it till it comes out of their wallet.
Right, but I think the option is,
The library would have no parking anymore in front of it.
They'd lose at least 1 spot,
but
1
No,
spot
wait,
there,
it's
1
not.
spot before.
it's not, there's not a parking spot there now,
Technically,
because people are just illegally parking there,
Yeah.
because it's 25 feet from the crosswalk.
Oh.
So they're not actually losing a spot,
well,
we just need to be better at enforcing that.
How can you say that though? They've been using it for decades,
Right.
because it's not a parking spot.
Right, it's,
but it's been in use.
right,
People have
but,
parked on the crosswalk, I have seen it.
yeah,
I know.
It is not a parking spot,
right, and,
but they
But
use it.
within 25 feet, people are used to park.
right, but it's the same, I think it's the same concept is, if I choose to, I am issued a license by the DMV to drive, and that comes with knowing the laws for driving. And if I choose to speed and I get caught, then I should have a ticket. I think it's the same thing. The law didn't change, because, and I parked in front of the library before, but now I know that it's 25 feet, and I didn't realize.
Well, I think a lot of people just don't know that,
Mhm.
and nobody,
Maybe that's an
you may have gotten your
education.
license when you were 16, but I'm telling you, you don't know what the regs are. It's just, that's, and what we're trying to do is at least define those regulations as we know have been sort of over time, just sort of encroached on. I think
For the sake of safety.
that Andrew needs to, one, give you and us input as to what he is going to do to help us make sure this is a safer environment. I know he has ticketed people who have parked on or near it, I know. So the question is, how can we help him better do his job? And if Rick says a sign is going to be a helpful thing, then maybe we have to do that. I think maybe between the three of you, you can figure that out. I would advocate again, though, it's about speed also.
Right.
And while the flashing speed signs, I think, help, I don't think it's helpful to keep them there forever,
Right.
because
Yeah.
people just sort of ignore them and go away, so I think we need to pick them up and move them, and it's a pain, but I think we just need to have a rotational, so it just pops up in someone's mind as to what they're doing. It's, I know I beat a drum on it, but.
So do we need a motion to remove the,
Why? It's a deal, it's, we didn't make a motion to do it.
Oh, yeah, I did. I
I
remember when
believe
it
you
went
did.
in, it was a big deal.
Yeah.
To
Really?
apply for a
Yeah.
permit with the DOT, I would imagine that would have been a motion.
Alright, well then let's.
And people were so excited when it went in, I remember.
when they
I
got
do.
passed?
I remember
Yeah.
covering it,
Yeah.
Well, you
because
know,
it slowed people down.
But it doesn't
Lori
anymore.
was here.
Well, it did then.
And the first guy hit it and slowly went down. Alright, well, I make a motion that we have them removed. And that we put under the purview of the Streetscape Committee a recommendation as to how to solve the crosswalk issue. Or at
That's
least,
you,
I'm sorry?
that's you now.
Yeah, that is us now. That's the motion there.
Got that.
I'll second that.
Do you want to second it?
Hmm.
I second it.
Okay, any discussion?
It's a discussion.
Nope. Uh-uh.
Why wouldn't you second it?
This is your turn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And I will, Rick, Andrew and I will come up with some plan for how to move forward with the signs moving around town, and then talk to Andrew about enforcement.
Because I think that's important. While Lynn may be right that we, everyone's excited to have them and it does slow people down, we can't just take them away and say we're just gonna leave it because we don't want liability. I think we just have to say we're gonna take other means because this is less effective.
Right.
And also, I think there's education that we can communicate out. Last on the agenda is,
Always seems to be last.
Me first, huh?
Let me just,
board goals.
let me just take this back. This is something that I brought to the board when I got on. It's just my common practice each year to set goals for myself and for my firm and for, so I thought that it might be something that,
For 2019 or for 2020?
well, actually, it's 2018 goals for
Okay.
2019.
All right.
Or 2020, whichever you take pick. Again, I'd say just look these over. And unless you guys had already,
I have not.
no bandwidth yet for that.
No,
I don't think.
And I, you know-
In my packet.
The very last
yeah,
one.
very last, all the way to the bottom. Everything out of order.
That's all right.
I'm 56 days in and not quite ready to
Okay.
talk about it. I think it's a great idea, I think we need to.
Well, it just gives us something to ground ourselves on somewhat. Just to give you a little bit of historical perspective, I think we had, one of the goals was to try to do things here internally, in the actual town hall, and we did a all chairs board, for lack of a better term, once. And I think there were some really good ideas that came out of it.
If you flip it over, there's a few more things on the backside of
Oh,
that.
was there?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, so we were talking about trying to do a public forum somewhere off-site. This was typically when we were not meeting, when we were meeting during the day versus going out at night. Now we've sort of solved that a little bit, but the idea was to maybe go into some neighborhoods and talk about it and do that. And we talked about videotaping, or actually live streaming, right? And we've done that here. I think Jeff was a proponent of that. He did a great job at that. But I think that we talked about doing more and requesting that each of the departments in their meetings do so. Do you guys do that
What's that?
at planning and zoning live stream?
No, we do not, we are advised by our attorney not to.
Right.
Because
There's just too many ways that people can actually sue the commission for predetermination, and it just opens up a whole can of worms, and invites lawsuits. So we are advised not to do that. I'm required by state statute to record inland wetlands, and I am required through the bylaws and the ordinance to record P and Z, just audio, but not video.
does it specifically say audio?
It specifically says audio.
Weird.
And I would admit, my commission, neither of my commissions want to change that.
Gestures and expressions.
I'm sorry?
Gestures and expressions. And
All right, well, anyway, that was, I don't know, Park and Rec doesn't do it either.
No,
Were they also advised?
I have no idea.
I think you're the only one that does it.
We're the only one that does it. Well, here's my gesturing.
We're the only one who live streams.
All right, well, anyway, that was discussed and talked about. A welcome package was talked about, and not a welcome package for, for stores. It was how to walk through town hall, how to get introduced, what's your town hall, who are your town hall people. And so, there you have it.
So I think we'll keep this on the agenda
Okay.
Yeah.
and try to come up with some for the year as we move forward. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.